rats start coming into the prison to try to stay warm and find food. And a lot of the guys would get them when they're really small. And when you get them when they're really young, you can feed them, touch them, things like that, and they grow up being used to human contact and they just bite. So you'll have guys in there with rats, you know, a foot long that they raised since they were almost born. If the guards find them, they'd stomp them, flush them down toilets, stuff like that. You would also have other weird things every now and then. You'd have guys come in every so often with snakes that would, you know, crawl into the fence and make it into the prison yard. And the guy would stuff this thing down his pants and smuggle it back into prison. Birds, every so often you'd see somebody that had gotten a small bird that had fallen out of a nest that had been built in the razor wire that surrounded the prison. He would bring that back in. Those were the hardest to keep secret because they would chirp, scream, every morning. You would hear it in the barracks, and everyone was like, "What the hell is that?"
How did you? I know that you found that you were on a quest while in prison in terms of basically the same quest that you've been on prior to being wrongfully accused and wrongfully convicted in terms of a spiritual quest. While inside for all those years, though it, on some level, it is very helpful, you know, in terms of your mental condition, your psyche to continue on. But really, I mean, how were you able to stay focused? How were you able to stay, like you said, you know, and sit for 5 or 7 hours of meditation?
It really, what it comes down to is I didn't have a choice. You know, and on death row, for me, the main thing that drove me forward in my spiritual practice was pain. On death row, there's almost no medical care whatsoever. You know, they're not going to spend a lot of time, money, and energy taking care of somebody that they plan on killing. So if you have something wrong with you, there's not much help for you in there. You know, at one point, I had a lot of nerve damage in my teeth just from being hit in the face so many times. And, you know, in prison there are no caps, no crowns, no root canals, none of that sort of stuff. So I was in extreme pain. And the only choice they give you is either you live with the pain or you let them pull your teeth out. I didn't want to live without teeth, so I had to find some way to deal with the pain. And for me, that was meditation, that was energy work. I became extremely passionate and focused on things like Reiki, Qigong, quantum touch, and what I would do, I always approached it more as a science than a religion. You know, I don't really care about the religious aspect of it. What I care about is what works, why it works, how it works, and how do you make it work even better. Because it was the only thing saving my life in there. It was the only thing keeping me going. It was the only thing that was allowing me to deal with a lot of the pain that I was having. If I were out here and I could have went to a doctor or could have went to a dentist, I probably wouldn't have been nearly as dedicated to it as I was in there. But doing it, you learn so much more. It's almost impossible to even articulate. You know, you learn things that seem like miracles that most people out here will never know just because they won't have to delve that deeply into it. And I think eventually in my life, that's what I'd like to end up doing. You know, after things die down a little bit, maybe, you know, we live in a small town now, maybe have like a little meditation center where I could share some of the same things I learned in prison that helped me survive with other people who are in desperate situations in life.
Yeah. You stayed faithful to the magic.
Exactly. Exactly.
When first incarcerated, and obviously there's all the huge shock and trauma of everything that's, you know, that has been hurled at you. But after that period of time, I mean, I'm not going to say it, but there was something you told me once that I thought was very beautiful, as well as just incredibly tragic. You know, Keats. What were the things you missed most, aside from the obvious, you know, family, freedom? So,
Yeah, you could name it's being able to see the moon at night, or the stars, or being able to touch the people you love, or foods that you haven't had, or rain on your skin. But really what it all comes down to, the thing you miss the most is being treated like a human being, because you're not in prison. That's the reason they dress everybody alike. That's the reason they take your name and give you a number. That's the reason they can treat you the way they do, as brutal as they do, because in their mind you're no longer even a human being. So you don't even experience the most basic levels of kindness. You become just a case to them. And when you put everything together, that's what it is you miss the most. You just miss being treated like a human being.
I remember when before you were out, I'd asked Lori, Damien's lovely wife, what is it? What's the first thing he wants? What does he want? What's the first thing he wants to do or see or feel when he gets out after 18 years of this horror? And the answer came back through Lori from Damien. He just wanted to sit on the porch and watch the sun rise, set, no matter, he just wanted to see the sunset, sitting on a porch, nothing around.
It's kind of weird. One of the things I did miss the most really was rain. Out here, most people run from it. As soon as it starts coming down, people run from place to place to get away from it. But you don't realize how much you miss something like that till you don't have it anymore. So it was one of the really miraculous and odd things was that, like, pretty much as soon as we got to New York, all of New York was leaving because Hurricane Irene was coming in. So it was almost like we had the city to ourselves for the most part. Everybody was sort of like rats deserting the ship. So while this hurricane was going on, I was sitting out on the balcony lifting weights while everybody else was trying to get away from it, and I just absolutely loved it.
You always searched for that, though, when you were a kid, right? You always used to go and search for it. You were the only one out there. The winter was yours. Everybody else was huddled up and running from all that, and you were rejoicing.
That's where I always felt the most at home. Anytime it's cold or there's snow on the ground, that's where I always felt that I belonged. I don't have a high tolerance for heat.
This is a tough one, actually. I don't know if anybody can answer this. Do you believe that the prison system in this country has to be the way it is? I mean, does it need to stay the way it is? Or are there any... I'll just read you the question they would like me to ask. Does the prison system in America have to be the way it is? What are some of the things about it that should be changed? Do you think society tolerates these terrible conditions because people don't know about them, or because they don't want to know about them?
It doesn't help.
I'd like to shake the hand of whoever wrote that question, because you just spun me completely back. I'm not even sure where I am now.
I think it is one of those things, like we were saying a while ago, society at large, society in general believes if you're in prison, you're probably getting whatever you get, you probably deserve. But I think what people don't understand is by keeping that attitude of vengeance, by keeping that attitude of revenge, you have to keep in mind that the vast majority of people who go to prison aren't going to be executed. Very few people end up on death row. The vast majority of people in prison one day are coming back out. They're coming back, they're going to live in your neighborhoods, in your cities, they'll go to your churches, whatever it is, they're going to be around you. They're your fellow human beings. So do you really want someone who's been driven insane by the abuse in the prison system coming back into your world? What will have to change? The whole time I was in prison, I never saw one single program geared towards rehabilitation. None, ever, period. Just didn't happen. Maybe there is is something that interstates, but in Arkansas, I never saw anything.
Well, that's the thing, it's each individual place is sort of subject to, in terms of rules and stuff like that. It's not really set in stone in terms of like the war.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
it's a personality thing, so if you end up with a dick, you end up with a dick.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I think by changing the prison system, approaching it in a different way, the way people are treated, the way people are rehabilitated, you shouldn't look at it as you're helping the other person so much, if that's hard to swallow. Look at it as you're helping yourself, because in the end you really are.
Yeah. Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can discharge a productive citizen, a productive human being, as opposed to some of the things some of the people we get. I know that you had a lot of supporters, obviously, West Memphis 3, .org and around the globe, a lot of supporters, and a lot of celebrity supporters, Henry Rollins, certainly Eddie Vedder, Patti Smith,